Cool. So it's 8:30 and I'm just conscious of time. So Holly will let our guests in and we'll just let everyone catch up with where we're at. But thank you everyone for being so punctual and making it this morning bright and early. We started doing these breakfast kind of clubs in lockdown and now we just continued them. We used to do a lot of evening events and we will go back to some of them because they are quite enjoyable as well. But right now we've got a mix of both of them. So thank you everyone for joining us. We have got a mix of CIO kind of tech leaders within the kind of female IT leadership space, but equally we've got quite a few people from Crimson, so welcome Crimson Academy and everyone else who's on the meeting today. So a little bit about me for those of you who don't know, I'm Keisha. I founded our Women in Tech club, so about 2 years ago now. We did start it as in-person events where we're doing wine tasting get-togethers and more interactive kind of social events, but obviously that all stopped due to lockdown. So we have made them virtual. However, like I said, we will be going back to doing a mix of them both. My background, so I used to be a CIO headhunter, started out at Harvey Nash, have spent some time internal as well as resource partner at Holland and Barrett before moving to Crimson, a CIO headhunter again, and also took after strategic partnerships. I've also created the CIO candidate workshop and Women in Tech events. And now most recently I've gone to set my own personal branding agency, but I'm still a Crimson ambassador and work very closely with Crimson on a number of their events and initiatives. A little bit about our events. So I personally love them. Obviously I'd say that because I created them, but we have got a really supportive group of women and I like to have a culture of, no question is a silly question. Everyone's super lovely, supportive. If you've got any things that you're concerned with in your role, in your day-to-day life when it comes to being a CIO, being a tech leader, or just working in tech, this is a place where you can come open discussion and no judgment. So share your ideas as well. So if you've got something that's been working well for you, please do share it. We help you find solutions to your problems. And most importantly, have fun and meet others. So, I just talked around me running the CIO candidate workshop. I used to find majority of the time running a workshop of, 10 to 12 people around the country, majority would be men, or maybe you'd get 1 in 12. And then when I'd start to meet these women that would come, every so often they'll say, can you do anything more around getting women together? Because I'd really like to connect with new women. And hence this is why I've created this session. So hopefully you'll find it really valuable, but also make some long lasting connections as well.
Morning.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Morning.
So what I'd like you to do, if you are here this morning, is just introduce yourself in the chat window. So who you are, what your role is, and equally, if you've got your LinkedIn profile URL and would like to connect with others, please do insert that in the chat window. And I would like you to go and connect with others after the session or during if you've got time, but ideally you can stay focused on the session. But do write who you are, what your role is, and equally your LinkedIn URL in the chat window, please. So today's session is going to be all around knowing your worth, but also nailing that pitch. So really helping you with your presenting skills. And a little bit about me when it comes to knowing your worth. It's something that I've struggled with for quite a few years, but recently, I'd probably say the last couple of years, I've been able to overcome and also do a lot of work on. So I used to go to a lot of client meetings. I used to love getting the meetings, used to love the buzz of being able to book in meetings, go on site and meet various different clients. But whenever they'd ask me, okay, so how much is this going to cost me? Or, okay, so what are your fees? I would literally cringe up inside and think, oh my goodness, I can't tell them. Or I'd think, are they going to think I'm being greedy for asking for this rate? So I often used to let clients lead the discussion, which is so bad to even admit. But I used to get really awkward at the fee stage, at the money stage. I used to have a real problem with actually just articulating my worth, but equally saying, yeah, this is my fee, sticking to it, and also having confidence in myself that actually I can charge these fees. So I'd always struggle with that. And then I started to realise, have conversations with other people in the industry, and they were saying, yeah, Keisha, I'm charging these rates, and they're less experienced than me, maybe didn't have as many contacts or weren't doing as much networking and didn't have that kind of credibility and rapport, but they were charging a lot higher fees than me. And that made me realise to say to myself, there's people out there with less experience than you, but charging a lot more than you, and you've got to do something about that. So I started to do some work around kind of mindset, but equally overcoming things like imposter syndrome to really help me with the whole charge my worth and knowing actually, Keisha, you can charge this, you are worth it, but equally, what is the client going to get from you in result, and what is the service that you provide, and why can you charge these kind of fees. So once I started to do some work around that, actually the whole fee and negotiation part became a lot easier, and I started to not feel as awkward about the whole situation. Actually, I was the one bringing it up to them, but doing it in a consultative way, which made me feel good. And also, often the clients would say, "Yep, that's absolutely perfect." And I thought, what have I been worrying about the whole time? And from speaking to a lot of other women, I do know it's a struggle that a lot of women have around knowing your worth when it comes to maybe salary negotiations, maybe contract day rate negotiations, or consultancy rates. And hopefully this session will help you overcome that, but equally be able to present your worth and present in a way that feels good, but equally that you communicate effectively as well. So what I'd like you to do, if you can, in the chat window, just write what is it that you're struggling with most when it comes to presenting. So if you're new into presenting, I know we've got some people in the academy here, and it's been a recent thing for you, no problem. Let us know what you've been struggling with the most when it comes to presenting. Is there something that you're getting stuck on? And if you're an experienced CIO, tech leader, equally let us know, because no matter where you're at in your journey, there will always be something that you're potentially struggling with or like to get better at. So do let us know in the chat window if you can. I'll just have a look at the chat window. Thanks everyone for introducing yourself. Great to see you. Hi Kate, hi Madeline, hi Alexandra. Cool, so let us know in the chat window what it is that you're struggling with most when it comes to presenting. And then the second question that we've got also is, do you think you undervalue yourself and why? So just a couple of minutes here just to reflect on why you feel like you're struggling when it comes to presenting, and also if you feel like you undervalue yourself, why is this, or is this something that you're trying to understand more about? And in the session, we'll help you kind of uncover why, but equally give you some really good tips around presenting, around knowing your worth, but equally hopefully give you some takeaways that you can put into action when you're in front of clients or just in day-to-day with presenting internally as well. And what we'll do as we go through the presentations today from our amazing women that we've got lined up, we'll be referring back to these things. So thank you for being honest and open in the chat as well. Perfect. So that brings me on to our amazing speakers that we've got. So Rebecca is going to be our first speaker. Rebecca's a CIO and the owner of a consultancy that specializes in digital transformation and leadership. So she's got tons of experience in both being a CIO, but also running her own business. So when it comes to negotiating, presenting, but equally being a really solid CIO, working with various different organizations, she's got all that experience, and she's going to bring that to you and tell you a bit about her experiences as well. Her topic's going to be all around understanding your worth and also being able to articulate that. So get to know your worth, negotiate, and increase your worth as well. So a lot of it will come down to mindset and how you see yourself, and Rebecca will help you with that. Our next speaker is Catherine Ann Reed, and she's the founder of Jokit Technologies. So Catherine Ann is also a founder of her own business in the digital space, and she's got over 30 years experience in business sales experience, which is absolutely huge. So she's going to be talking to you all about pitching for success. So most of you who are on our meeting right now, you're going to have to pitch at some point. You've had to pitch at some point, whether that's internally or externally. So we're going to help you with pitching and also exploring how to prepare for a pitch and what makes a great presentation. So what you need to do before a pitch, what's going to be really important to set you up for success, but equally what makes a great presentation. Rebecca, over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and then we'll pass over to you.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming. I just want to have a very quick shout out to Louise Robinson, who I've just seen us join the chat. I worked with Louise. How long ago was it, Louise? Was it 8? No, it must have been like about a year ago, which is lovely. And it was one of my favourite clients I worked with. So I had a great time working with Louise and doing lots of stuff with CIPD, which is where I worked then. Anyway, so I'm going to share my
everyone.
Everybody connect with Louise. She's awesome. So I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully I can do this. I've got like dual monitors, so if it takes me about 3 years to get there, then I do apologise.
I'll let you know.
Louise is waving. There she is. It's like being a radio DJ.
Oh.
Right. So let me share my screen, and I think it's this one here. So and let me then get the chat back on. So
great, got it.
Can you see my screen? Amazing. It's really, really weird actually, because I can't see the screen that I'm sharing like I thought I would do, but I've got it over here. So I've got the chat. I'm going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So if I ask a question, obviously, please feel free to put it in the chat, but also feel free to interrupt. As Louise will certainly know, I'm one of these people that does like interrupting people, so I can only apologise when that may happen. So I'm Rebecca Fox. As Katie gave me a wonderful introduction, I've been CIO, IT director, probably for the last 10 years in various organisations. About 5-6 years ago, I decided to set up my own little consultancy, and occasionally I get people working through it as well. But typically, I'm a one-woman band where I go into organisations and do stuff. And as one of my friends said, as long as you leave things in a better place than where you found them, then probably you've succeeded. And I think that's what I do, and I really enjoy what I do. And certainly when I worked with Louise, I was, talking about women in tech, I was so impressed. There was a really good gender balance, I think of about 50-50. The current client I'm working in, one of the first things I checked was just what's the gender balance, because literally I'm reporting to a guy and I've got 9 guys reporting to me, and it was just like, oh my goodness, where's the gender balance? And there was, I think it's about 14% women in this team of about 100. It's it's not good enough. And I've vocalized that already. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about knowing your worth and negotiating it. For some of you, you may already know your worth and you're awesome and you're doing all that kind of stuff, and that's absolutely fantastic. If not, sometimes we just need a bit of confidence just to understand that we're worth more than maybe what we think we are, or more importantly, worth more than what our paymasters and the places we work for, whether that's a permanent job or a temporary job or doing work, whether they're paying us. And I can absolutely relate to Keisha's things where you're never really quite sure where you want to pitch yourself. It's important to get that right, to get the business, but also not to underpitch yourself, because actually in some ways that's worse. And whether that's an interim job or a permanent job, you need to get that right, but also you need to feel valued in a job. And actually, I'm not just saying money's everything, and we'll come on to that in the presentation. But going into work and knowing that you're paid right for what you do is so important for your self-worth. Anyway, I shall begin. So the first one is a quote from C.S. Lewis, and that is, "We are what we believe we are." So just kind of building on what I just said, if we don't believe we're worth more, actually we're not worth more. So we've got to believe in ourselves that we are worth more than really maybe where we are now. And I'm going to show you a book on the screen. And by the way, I want to point out it's the worst book I've ever read. And I shouldn't say that, because it is actually by a woman author, and it's called Extreme You. And one of those books that you just kind of read and it just goes on and on and on, probably a bit like my presentation is right now, but it just goes on and on. And I was reading it, and I always determined to get to the end of a book, but it was a bit kind of a white cis privileged woman trying to tell us how great she'd been, when actually it's hard not to fail in that instance. But for me, the one thing I got out from there was this thing about checking yourself out, where you literally do an audit of yourself and you go, actually, is this right for me? Am I actually worth what I'm worth? So we are what we are. Let me go again. Yeah. We are what we believe we are. So I've got a question for you all. How do you measure and value yourself? And this isn't a work situation, so let's not think about home. But in terms of work, in terms of what you're paid in the job that you do every day, how do you value yourself? How do you think people value you too? What kind of things do they look at in you? What do they look at Rebecca and say, actually, well, she's worth this because of X, Y, and Z? You can either shout out or you can type it in the chat. Either of those would be great.
I suppose for me, value comes with recognition and what people. It sounds bad, but if people think I've done a good job, then I feel valued.
So the previous successes that you've done.
Yeah, I would say if I feel like I've done a good job and people think I have as well, then I know that I'm valued. And a lot of it will come down to, I suppose, recognition and feedback. But that's how I'd say so far I've measured my value anyway.
Louise, thank you, Louise. I knew you wouldn't let me down. So Louise has talked about past experiences. Yeah, and I just want to kind of bring this slide together now. So certainly that when we apply for a job, certainly when I put myself Yeah, recognition and praise. Okay, that's really good. And it wasn't the way I was actually going to go on this, but I absolutely get the praise, and that's past successes. But like, you know, when we apply for a job, and when I apply for an interim gig or whatever I'm doing in terms of a pitch, you know, it's like, you know, what skills have I got, and that's really comes from my experience, what's on my CV, and also what qualifications that I've got. But I also want to go into these, and that's like how you get in the door. Did somebody say something?
Joe, you on mute? I'll just put a mute. That's fine. I'm mute
Okay.
now. Carry on.
But I also want to say all these other stuff, including recognition. I think it's a really, really good thing. You know, there's the attributes that we have. You know, how much of a leader are we? How ambitious are we? You know, what kind of loyalty do we have for the people that we work for? These are all things, you know, soft skills or attributes that we have that actually make us worth more. Obviously, some of them can make us appear to be worth less, but actually they're really, really good. You know, I look at kindness, and if we look at the last 18 months of working in the pandemic, you mean, you know, yes, I will be sharing the slides, Kaya. I think I said Kaya, right? So in terms of kindness, if you look at the last 18 months, you know, kindness has been the thing that we've all, you know, waved the flag over, you know, be kind to everyone. And actually that's really helped in the last 18 months. And, you know, I can only, you know, I only dread to think and any kind of feel that, you know, now we're all kind of getting back to the office, you know, kindness seems to be going off the boil. But all that kind of stuff, you know, some people have more time than others. You know, that's, you know, certainly as a working woman, and thankfully my son's 25 now, but as a working woman, sometimes we're kind of quite time poor. So actually time can be a good thing or a bad thing. You know, just how we're motivated, but also how we motivate other people. Am I a good person to work with? Am I a good person to work with? You know, also people have got logical minds. Are people thinking in the right way? Are people strategic thinkers? Are people precise? These are all skills that we have, and you're absolutely right, Keisha, in terms of, you know, the past work you've done for a client. They're not just going to be thinking about your skills, experience, and qualifications. They're going to think, you know, all these other great things that you brought along with yourself in terms of delivering those things.
I feel like these are the things that you realise that will help you know your worth, but then the recognition is what comes after.
Absolutely. So actually, you know, we are worth more because we've got the skills, experience, and all these other wonderful things. And you know, it's maybe a gender thing too. And you know, we I don't know whether everyone knows this, but you know, when a man gets a job spec, and typically just in terms of maybe nurturing, programming, whatever, you know, they go, I can do that, and that. Whereas women typically go, oh, I'm not quite sure I can do that. You know, all that, and maybe I can do that and that. Oh, I'm not going to apply for that role. Or I'm not going to put myself forward. And I think that's just, you know, just the way sometimes we're programmed, or sometimes way genders have been nurtured growing up. So that for me is one of the things I think about when I measure my value. Yes, I've got some skill. Yes, I've got some experience. Yes, I've got some qualifications. But actually, all those other things, that I am ambitious, that I am loyal, that I am positive, makes me enjoyable to work with. I hope, Louise. But also, it comes across in conversations that I have in the roles that I do with the people that work for me. But also, in essence, getting that job. So actually, when I'm negotiating my rate, I'm saying, you know, it's this rate here. And that's why I'm worth it, not just because of my skills and experience and qualifications. So don't just think in those kind of rigid terms. So I also want to point out that in business, we put a higher value on some things than others. So, you know, if we're at home, you know, certainly I want a partner that's more kind than probably driven. Although sometimes the drives, you know, is really nice, but actually that's what we want. You know, you want kind people. You know, you want more experience than qualifications. Certainly in a relationship, what qualifications have you got for being in a relationship? But in work, they're different. We put a different value on stuff, and I think this is also the reason why women sometimes miss out in the workplace, because actually those qualities that we want in home are actually different to the ones that typically we want in work. And you know, that's when we have some of those negative combinations. You know, you need to act like a man more, and all that bullshit that goes with that. So don't think like that in any way. I also want to say that in some roles, for example, you might want different attributes to others. So for example, if you're an accountant, you probably want to be more precise and positive, but just think of an awesome accountant that is absolutely precise, but also positive about what they do. Or someone that works in sales, that's maybe got loads of sales qualifications, but actually isn't focused enough to actually deliver a result at the end of the month or the end of the year. So just think about these things, and maybe your own role, about what attributes you have that make you better at doing your thing and actually should be rewarded more for actually what you do. Has anybody got any questions on those couple of slides? Cool. So some people think, you know, that they're worth and being paid correctly right now. And I just want to point out a couple of things why I think that's probably unlikely. So certainly, I don't know anyone that ever thinks they're paid enough. And it might be in the last 18 months things have changed, where we're all, you know, all grateful to have got through the pandemic and got a job. But actually, now we're coming out of that, and now we've worked really, really hard for the last 18 months at home in isolation, juggling kids and all that kind of stuff. You know, most people want to get paid more, but don't think they're worth it, or they don't want to ask. And we're going to come on to that ask stuff in a minute. So first of all, I do think you're worth more, just the fact that you've got through the last 18 months. I also think social norms get in the way. So, you know, when you see someone say, oh, I'm earning this much money, and yes, it's braggish, and we shouldn't talk about that, and we shouldn't brag about it. But actually, people do think it's greedy, it's selfish to earn more, to be paid their worth. And actually, as women, and generally, we just need to get over that. And the third thing, and this is a really important thing I'm going to talk about in a minute, is the gender pay gap. So I don't know how many of you have actually investigated the gender pay gap in any detail. You know, it exists, it absolutely exists. And I'm going to show you some stats in a minute as to why I think, if nothing else, if you think you are worth your worth right now, is you just go back and just check yourself out and reevaluate and go, actually, I think I'm worth more than I'm currently being paid. Okay. So I took some stats off the internet, so they're probably wrong. But this was a slide that I took from a relatively, I would say it's a tech centre. It's about payment gateways and payment services. And I'm based in Manchester, and this was about the gender pay gap for women. So on average in this particular sector, techish sector, and Manchester's here, Manchester's there on the map, but it's here. It's here on the thing. So in theory, potentially 14-15% less paid than men. You know, that's something that I should be going, is that right? Is this true? If you work in London, it's more like 30%. So I just think as women, we just need to go, actually, notwithstanding all the skills and the values and all that other stuff that we bring to our work, you know, gender pay gap is real, and we should just be checking out whether this is true in our organisation. And the stats are quite horrific just generally. So still 8 in 10 businesses, this was from 2020, I think, 8 in 10 businesses still pay men more than women. So if you're in one of these organisations, you know, the chances are you are being paid less than someone else that's doing a very similar job. You know, I said before, about 15% paid less in Manchester. Paid less by 15%, not 15% paid less. So paid less by 15% in Manchester. And if we equate that in days, and I just want to put this in terms of, you know, it could be days with your kids, it could be days on holiday, it could be anything. It means that typically we're working an extra 30 days free for our employees compared to what somebody else may be paid around us. So I just want you to just think about that in terms of when you check yourself out. Has anybody got any thoughts on the gender pay gap? Has anyone actually experienced it in their life where they've worked with someone that was on a big disparity and it was probably due to gender?
I was just going to ask Lou, we've got our head of recruitment on the session. Lou, have you had any, I suppose, experience with this or any thoughts around it recently?
Tina says always, by the way.
Holly, is Lou still here?
Let me just have a quick look. I think she is.
Kay has just said she believes that she needs to change her job to close the gender pay gap, and I'll talk very briefly about whether I think people should change jobs and the options they've got.
Thank you.
And do you think a lot of it comes down to the pay gap is, I suppose there's two reasons, isn't there? One, because a lot of women still maybe don't know their worth and maybe struggle with things like imposter syndrome and actually asking for it. Then equally because of like historic and how things used to be. So do you think it's because of the two reasons? Because women maybe don't ask for it as much, they stick with the normal what they're being paid, but equally because the clients aren't paying enough.
So I think it's a lot of things. I think, and I'll come on to this in terms of long-term and short-term relationships or transactions. So I think some people have been in an organisation for 6 years, and actually gender pay gap's been around for forever. We know this, but actually it's only really had a spotlight in the last, proper spotlight in the last few years. And the reality is if you're in a job and you're earning less than everyone else, actually, is an organisation going to pay you a significant pay difference to take you up to where you need to be? Or are you going to be on that thing where you're just earning your 1-2%, standard pay increase every year? Because actually 1-2% of a lower salary is always less cash than 1-2% of a higher salary. So actually, it's never really going to get fixed without those big lump sums of pay rises that are going to happen. And as Kaya said, probably the way to do it is to jump ship, is to get another job. I don't think that's the answer for everyone, and we'll come on to actually about being big, being bold, and being brave in a minute. So I just want you to think about this. So your worth is more than your work-based skills and experience. So think about your passion, think about the drive, think about the kindness, think about the positivity that you bring to your job, that you bring to your work, and all those things, drive up your worth, what you're worth to an organization without any question at all. Nobody wants to work with somebody that's miserable. Nobody wants to work that somebody's not happy and smiley. And they're all attributes that we'll be amazing at. So we just need to get there. And of course, we can always be better at those things when we're paid more, when we're rewarded fairly. Also, the gender pay gap absolutely is real. And I know someone from Crimson can come on and talk about that, but it is real. The stats are out there, the data's out there. And also, don't let social norms get in the way. Don't let people say, oh, you can't earn that much, that's greedy. Oh, you can't earn that much, that's selfish. It's bullshit. Literally, it's absolute bullshit. We just need to be paid our worth, and that's what we should do. So I would urge you today or tomorrow or this week to just reevaluate yourself, going, am I being paid my worth? Absolutely do it again against the gender pay gap as a background, but also just go, is what I'm doing, am I being paid, or am I getting the right package, or am I getting the right benefits for what I'm doing? It's really important, because then we can go to work with a head held high, we can go to work with more passion, or we can go and do something else. So it's really, really important in terms of that. So I just want to say that if you've got there, and we all know that we're worth more, it's about negotiating it and then fundamentally getting it. And there's lots of ways of doing that. And I'm going to talk about a few things around that. So I also found this quote from Clive Sinclair, who died last year. I don't know if you remember that, the Sinclair C5. I was pretty tiny when it came out. I remember it on Tomorrow's World, and everyone was going, oh, it's an electric vehicle, it's going to change the world. Obviously, 40 years later, things have not changed, or they're just starting to, should I say. And he said, you either do it yourself or it ain't going to happen. And I think this is really, really true. When we know that we're worth more, it's like it's up to us to get it. Don't expect your organization to suddenly go, we're paying women 14.7% less, we're all going to give them a pay rise, because that's never going to happen. Never going to happen at all. So it's up to us to do something about it. So I've got a story of when I worked for a client. In fact, by the way, Louise, it wasn't CIPD; it was a client I worked for before. And I was doing this work. I was leading a couple of big transformation projects for a government department, who are pretty hot on gender pay gap, by the way. But we're both doing a very similar role. In fact, I always think I was working harder and delivering more. But let's not go there on that one. Anyway, I went, I want a rate increase. I want a pay rise. Anyway, I went on holiday and I came back to a 15% pay rise, and all I did was ask. This is really selfish, probably greedy, selfish, Rebecca, although I'm not either of those things. I was really annoyed. It's like, well, I've got my pay rise, but I didn't have any chance to negotiate what I was going to get. It was a great pay rise, but it was like, but I wanted more, because I knew I was worth more, and I also knew this person was also probably getting paid more than me. So I literally just asked, and I got it. I'm not saying it's as simple as that for everybody, but if you don't ask, you don't get. So I also want to say that life is one big negotiation. Every day we get up in the morning, we walk down the street, we get on the bus. There's all lots of little negotiations going on. Who steps out of the way on the street, who gets on the bus first, all that kind of stuff. So we can either choose to engage with it, or we can ignore it. And often our subconscious gets us there. So we can either be passive or we can be active. But either way, it's happening all the time around us. And just like, asking for a pay rise or getting a job is one of those things where probably needs to be a bit more active, or we are active, certainly if we're getting a job. So I want to ask you guys, when was the last time you asked for a discount for anything? Last week it worked. I like it, Catherine, and that is brilliant. When was the last time you asked for a discount?
Mine was probably a couple of years ago when I bought my house. But
Amazing.
not I'd say on a day-to-day basis maybe I could do more of. Be interesting what Catherine Ann did with hers last week.
Yeah, Catherine Ann, what did you do last week, Catherine Ann?
I think she's just rebooting.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hey.
Hi, Rebecca. It's Louise Clark. I'm so sorry. My chat function's not working. It's all blank
It's
today.
all right,
and
Louise.
it
You
keeps
can
doing
it's
this,
lovely to hear you.
I'm a bit of a talker as well, and I absolutely loved your introduction when you said I do interrupt people because it's such a bad thing that I do, and everyone kind of criticises me. But it's almost like I can't help myself. I'm just this bursting kind of. But I am very mindful. It's not always great. But yeah, it was really hilarious when you said that. Just on this front, I run the recruitment team at Crimson, and I've got a fantastic team. And just resonating with what you've said earlier for me, I ask for discounts all the time, just because I like the challenge of knowing whether I can. But equally, I'm also happy to pay what I need to pay, if not sometimes offer a bit more when I'm buying something like locally from someone. It's really random. It is very much about what I feel it's worth and the value of it to me, whilst not wanting to shaft anyone. But I think going back to your points here in terms of being passive or positive, I am a very positive person. I like to think of myself as motivating, but I know there's been several times in my own career where I possibly have not necessarily asked for pay rise and this, that, and the other, and actually preferred to sort of promote and develop my team and get the satisfaction from them. And then to be fair, the pay rises have come up, and very fortunate with good bosses who are looking out and just doing the right thing by me. But it is hard because I don't have any trouble with making a tit of myself and speaking up. But I know colleagues I've worked with are mortified when they have to have these types of conversations, that imposter syndrome. And I think also my last comment was around organisations and how they measure the things such as kindness, positivity, and all the things you mentioned, because some organisations often fall into this, oh, well, we really like this person, but it doesn't fall in our pay grade or this, that, and the other. And we hear this so much. And the measurement of those softer things that you mentioned, especially through the pandemic when we were working from home and having to really motivate, over communicate with everyone, but also trying to tease out many people who were just sitting there very, very quiet because they just felt even more lost and even more kind of nervous to speak up over Teams and things like that. And there's a real balance and challenge, I think, that we've got. Me as a leader trying to get people to speak up, but equally giving them the opportunity. Sorry, I've gone on loads of things there.
No, you've already said you're interrupting that. No, and everything you said, I absolutely resonate with, and certainly that kindness thing over the pandemic, but also giving people space to working. So one of the things I often do when I go into an organisation is do this thing called Show the Thing, which Louise will know very much about, and it's a space where we can share stuff. And actually, what I really want is I want those people that typically don't present or are quite quiet to encourage them to present. And it's amazing, when they do it for the first time, and then the second time, and then you can't get them off. But the thing about asking for the discount is really interesting, because it is that kind of awkward conversation. Because I do, it embarrasses people I'm with sometimes. It's like, I'm buying a phone cover last week, and I said, it's 15 quid. Can I have a discount? It's only £3 they gave it off for me, but that's a coffee, right? Yeah. And it's just that kind of conversation.
Well, for me, it's often when I'm with my children, actually, and I know this sounds awful, but sometimes if they're using their own pocket money and we're out and about and they're buying something, and it is a lot more expensive than I think it's worth, and actually saying to the kids, ask the lady what you want to, and I've even got my children doing it, like when my daughter was buying poppets, and things like that. It's just actually having the confidence to actually say, I think this is worth £5, not 10. Are you prepared to take the £5? And of course they are, because they want, but I know and it shouldn't be the case for everything, but
agreed.
Yeah.
It should be the case for everything, and you've got to be certainly, I know negotiations with suppliers, and you've got to be careful that the supplier or whatever can still deliver and actually still make a living, because we don't want to take that off them, but actually it's about getting the balance right. But just asking the question gets you feeling a bit uncomfortable with asking those awkward questions that we've all been nurtured never to ask. So Vicky, can I just say, student card, I've always been trying to get a hold of a student card. I think I'm too old for a student card. I'd love to get a fake one, by the way, because I think that'd be a great way to get discounts off in shops. But you can't actually get them off unless you're a student, I don't think. But I mean, in Kea, buying a house, absolutely, it's really important. So can I ask people that maybe haven't asked for a discount, why haven't they asked for a discount? recently, maybe you've just bought things on the internet, which is incredibly hard to ask for a discount. One of the reasons why I don't like it, even though I work in tech. Are people not asking for discounts because they never thought they could do, or people asking for discounts because they feel a bit awkward about it? Can I ask what people are doing when they're not asking for a discount, when they're not kind of stepping out of their comfort zone? That'll be no. So
I think we've got one saying laziness.
Laziness. Okay, so maybe it is laziness, but all I would say
feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, the feeling uncomfortable. So I often, I'm just going to give some phrases that, I often say, is there a better price you can do, or is there any circumstance where you can give me a better deal? I did something the other day where I said I wanted 3 things, and I said, if I'm buying 3, can I have a better price? And of course, typically people say yes. And if I might say no, you've lost something. But all I'm trying to say is just use this as a little skill to get yourself feeling a bit awkward. So when you do ask that question of your boss tomorrow that you want a pay rise or you want to renegotiate your terms, you're feeling more comfortable about it, because it's a great thing to have. Practice. It's also great fun once you get out of that awkward feeling of it. And I'm really pleased that a lot of people are like me in terms of saying they will ask for a discount. But those people that don't, just ask, go and, I don't think you can ask for a discount really at Costa, or maybe you can. I've never tried that one. But just ask those awkward questions that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. It's a really great thing to practice. So when you ask those difficult questions going forwards, you're more used to them. I'm just realizing I'm taking more longer than I did. Long-term relationships versus long-term transactions versus short-term transactions. We touched about this earlier on. So in our jobs and our work, my gigs are typically quite short. I mean, they're anything as little as 6 months, but typically they can go on to 18 months, nearly 2 years. So when I negotiate what I'm going to earn, whatever my rate would be, the higher that rate is, or whatever terms are, maybe I want to take a Friday off or whatever it is, the better they are, the more I get over time. And that's the same in terms of if we negotiate a really good higher salary when we start a job, every pay rise there onwards is going to be a higher, is going to be more. It's also the same in our relationships. This is a mainly work conversation, but if you go in there, saying what you want from that relationship early on, you don't have to renegotiate it further down the line. It's great that some people negotiate discounts on houses if you're spending a lot of money in a house and you don't ask for some money off. Probably more for you, and apologies if that is you, but literally just ask for some money off, because actually if they're big chunks of money, and when all that money adds up over the years, could be tens of thousands of pounds, if not more. Likewise, when you buy a car, get the car for cheaper. But certainly when you're working and you're starting a job, negotiate up front. Don't think you can negotiate later on, which is exactly what I did in one of my roles in my 30s. I was so excited about this job. It was probably my first director job that I had of anything, and director in my title, it's brilliant. I got offered this job, I took it. And then I realized that all the other directors are being paid more than me. And it was just like, you're stuck. I couldn't, I was told I couldn't renegotiate my salary for 12 months. And to be fair, I only lasted there 18 months because it was just like, just such a miserable place to work. But absolutely getting in first and negotiating the start makes it so much easier, because you never get any of those kickbacks that say we don't change salaries for 12 months. And also, when that annual salary review comes, you're going from a higher base, so you're going from different terms. If you did want to work 4 days a week, not 5, negotiate it up front, because actually at that point, that's when they want you. But when you've been in there for 12 months and you're getting that review, you've already been there for 12 months, and actually they think you're okay. So my story is negotiate hard up front in terms of salary and terms. I also want to point out that sometimes money isn't everything, and this is really, really important. So we know our value. We know that we're all worth more, because we've talked about that. But money isn't always a thing. So certainly in some roles, I needed more space, more headspace for mental health, and more headspace to do things outside of my normal work. So sometimes shorter hours, more holidays, flexible working. Certainly as a working mum, you might want to. You might want different, more flexible hours, and of course the pandemic's kind of put a whole change on that. But we're gradually going to go back to the office. Maybe not full time, but it's certainly going to feel a bit more awkward than what it has over the last 18 months that we've got used to. But it's really important, and I'm going to ask another question for other people. You know, don't fall into that trap. You know, my partner once said they want to work 4 days a week. They only got paid 4 days a week, but by heck were they working 5 days a week, and they were being paid less. So has anyone else fallen into that trap where they've negotiated shorter hours, yet they've still done all the hours that we're doing, but for less money? Has anyone done that? Especially applies to teachers, by the way, less than the tech people. But it's a really, really easy trap to fall into, because you think you're getting all that benefit. I'm getting more time, but actually you're not. So I would say is don't give things away for nothing, and you can get a pay rise, and you can get flexible working or different benefits in the same conversation, or maybe a staggered conversation where you ask for a pay rise and then maybe later on you ask for shorter hours. Think about the strategy of how you might do that. Don't just ask for shorter hours, because you will get paid less, and you probably will work the same hours that you did before. I also want to say, don't forget the power of the proposal. This is all about negotiation techniques. By the way, I've got another book here. This was a really good book, by the way. This it talks all about negotiation. There's probably different books, but basically never split the difference. It's a guy that used to negotiate hostage releases, and he was talking about you can't really get half a hostage back. It's like, you know, they're either dead or alive. And it was really, really interesting in terms of some of the stories he had in there. So definitely recommend that book by Chris Ross. But when negotiating, always start with a proposal. It's like, you know, who's going to go first? It's a bit like asking for a discount. So, you know, be honest about what you want. You know, you deserve this with all those brilliant attributes that you've got. So, you know, and talk about the outstanding results you've got. So the power of the proposal is I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And that gives you a starting place for where you want to go from. Of course, make sure you understand what your must-haves, your should-haves, your could-haves. And if anybody's not heard of the Moscow method, just Google it. It's a really, really great way of structuring about what you want to do. It works in negotiation. It works when you're looking to buy a house, a car, going into a relationship, whatever. It's a really, really good way of structuring what's important to you in this particular, you know, this particular transaction, this particular thing you want from life. So don't forget the power of the proposal. Oh, skipping slides over there. So I'm going to leave with this one on this slide. So basically, you deserve exactly what you settle for. So if when I wanted my phone case cover, I said, I'm going to walk away when I didn't get a discount, that would have been fine. I deserved exactly what I settled for. So think about that in your jobs and your negotiations. I also want you to be bold, and I want you to be brave, because actually these are awkward conversations. It's also awkward to go, actually, I'm undervalued or I'm overvalued. You know, they're awkward conversations with yourself, not just with other people. So be bold and be brave. But most of all, I want you to do something, and I want you to do one of three things. But first of all, I want you to make sure you've written down that Moscow thing, what you want to get from your worth. But, you know, if you're going to ask for a pay rise, ask for one. You know, think about when you're going to do it, but do it. If you're going to negotiate new terms, go in there and negotiate them. Use that power of the proposal, both in terms of negotiating, but in terms of asking. And as somebody said over there, they think they need to look for another job. Don't just talk about it. You know, first of all, this is a recruitment agent place. So, you know, look for another job. You know, don't delay it. Don't say, I've got to get my CV in order. Start today. Do something today. And also practice at every opportunity. So, you know, ask for that discount. Get out of your comfort zone. Get used to asking those awkward conversations about money, whether it's little bits of money, big bits of money. Just be confident in terms of what you're doing and how you have those little conversations about negotiation, and be active in what you do. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with this slide here, which is, I absolutely believe you can have your cake and eat it. I also quite like baking, so it tastes even better when you bake it yourself. And of course, when you bake your cake yourself, you can always eat it yourself, but you can have your cake and eat it. And that's all I've got to say. I'm Rebecca Fox. If you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, you can search for Rebecca Fox and probably type in grey blue. I'm probably going to come up somewhere. I'm sure we're connected somewhere on LinkedIn, but please reach out. I'll happily chat to anyone and give them some support or guidance. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you all for listening and interacting as well. I really appreciated that.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. Love
Thanks,
that.
Rebecca. And you're dead on time. That is amazing. We're doing good. Catherine Ann, are you able to share your slides, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Rebecca.
If you haven't got any questions for Rebecca, also just put them in the chat window as well, if that's okay, Rebecca. Cool.
Hard act to follow.
I'll let you know when your slides have come up.
Yeah. Now, despite our having rehearsed this earlier, I'm having a fault with sharing my content. It's not allowing me to. Hang on, let's try now. No, actually it's not, which is really odd.
I'll share my screen. I've got your slides. Just let me know when to move.
If you can share them, that would be great. Thank you.
Cool.
And if I can see next slide when...
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Apologies for that, ladies. And that's where things can go wrong.
Cool, got your slides up.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. To reiterate, I'm Catherine Ann. I'm the founder and CEO of Docket. We are developing a smart digital filing cabinet that's going to reduce the time and stress that your life admin brings you. I'm not here to talk about that, but happy to give you more information another time. My background is over, in fact, it's 40 years. I feel ancient saying that. Business to business sales, which I gained primarily in the media communications industry. And I started off my career as an intrepid young sales rep. I had a rental car, I had a portfolio that was bigger than the boot, a huge target, and no idea what I was doing. It was before, I think, training was invented. Anyway, fast forward those 40 years, and I think I can safely say there's no mistake that I've not made. But what I have done is, I hope, is that I've learned from my mistakes. And the presentation I'm going to give takes about 10 minutes because I wanted to get everyone talking after that. So I want to share some of the insights that I've learned so that I hope that the next time you're invited to pitch, that will be able to help you. And I do, I'm going to give the same caveat as Rebecca. I may be telling some people here how to suck eggs, so apologies for that in advance. So the thing about pitching is it's actually not all about the slides. That's what a lot of people think. And in actual fact, it's got nothing to do with the slides. But could we have the next slide, please?
Of course.
Thank you. So a few years ago, I've primarily worked freelance as a consultant, and I was approached by a small organisation to help them with a pitch that was worth millions of pounds. At that time, the company turned over about £1 million, but they had no experience. Looking at the pitch, they had no experience in delivering what they were actually being asked for. Could they do it? Yes, but they didn't have experience in it. And then when I probed a bit deeper, I found that the pitch had actually gone out to 11 companies. It was a bit of a heavy pitch. It was going to cost a lot of money, suck a lot of time. And as I said, it wasn't a fit for the line of business that they were in. So my advice to them was, say no. You're never going to get appointed. You can't evidence that you can deliver the work. You can't evidence that you can manage a contract this size. And you're certainly not in a strong enough financial position to fund a job of this magnitude. And actually, asking 11 companies to pitch indicated to me that it was a pricing exercise more than someone that was looking for the best creative execution. Anyway, chap that owned the company absolutely poo-pooed me, said he had a great relationship with the contact there, and actually this was in the bag. He then went on to spend over £12,000, which is a lot for a small company, on external resources, including my fee, to create a beautiful creative response. And he never even got shortlisted. Why? Because despite my advice, he didn't do any due diligence. He was so bedazzled by the opportunity of working on this big high-profile event, and he believed his relationship with someone who was actually quite a junior member of the staff was enough to be awarded this business. Hang on, you shouldn't see it. So he actually did no clarification on what the response was that was required. He had no clarification on what the decision-making process was, and he actually never even found out who the person was that was making the final decision. His arrogance was palpable. This was in the bag. And that's a mistake so many people make. Pitching is a bilateral process. You know, you're involved in the pitch, you're entitled to ask questions. In fact, you know, I've lost count the amount of times a rookie salesperson has turned up waving a bit of paper saying, whoop, whoop, this is the next best thing, this is going to make us millions, it's in the bag, all we have to do is X, Y, and Z. So my advice is, before you do anything with a pitch, is that you find out, why have you been invited to pitch? Is it a pitch or is it a fishing expedition? People will go out to pitch for new ideas or for price comparison with incumbents, and find out, is this opportunity right for your business? Have you got the right people in place? Have you got the capacity to deliver a really good job? And importantly, have you got the money in the bank to keep you afloat if you need to buy in extra materials, or if you need to do, if you need to use subcontractors? And can you evidence that you can do it? What case studies have you got? And what have you got that can support client testimonials? What proof do you have? Now, I've got a startup, and I know that that final point can be quite tricky. But if you tick all the other boxes and you believe it is a real worthwhile opportunity, then look at what you can demonstrate from your past that you and the team have actually done, that you can deliver it. And a really important thing that so many people forget to ask is, what are the payment terms? Winning $1 million contract is one thing. The client taking 120 days to pay is another. And what about your existing clients and customers? If you win this business, how is that going to impact them? And can you deliver to the same level that they're used to? Are you confident that they won't suffer as a consequence? A stat that I like to always share is, and it's something to be mindful, those existing clients, a 5% improvement on the business they're giving you can actually increase your profit anywhere between 25 and 95%, whereas the cost of acquiring a new client can actually be 5 times that amount. Next slide, please. So you've done your due diligence and you're ready, you think, right, we're going to do this. So pitch responses can be anything from just a costing with some methodology, or a full-blown response like what I was talking about a minute ago, that can cost thousands of pounds and involve teams of people. But winning a pitch is all down to preparation. I mean, we all know the saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Something I would generally say is, never pitch unless you actually believe that you can win. However, my caveat to that is, sometimes you need to pitch a couple of times to get to know the client and to let them see that you're committed, and it's part of that relationship development and getting to know each other. But again, it's important that as a business, you put a time, you put a time around that and a budget against that. Otherwise, you end up flogging dead horses. And sometimes pitching can be a procurement process. And that's where some particularly much larger organisations go out to pitch maybe every 3 or 4 years. So again, do your homework if you've been asked to pitch at something like that, because if it's been the same person that's buying and it's the same organisation that's been delivering, then it's really unlikely that they'll change tack. Briefs, and I don't mean the kind that we pull on every morning, but make sure there's always a brief, and interrogate the brief, really interrogate it. If there's something you don't agree, then challenge it. Look at the budget, look at the timeline. Are they realistic? Is it workable? And is it workable against your current workload? You know, make sure that nothing's anything else that you've got going on isn't going to suffer as a consequence. Yesterday, I have a fortnightly call with some of my board advisors, and I was saying to Mike that I was doing this today, and actually ran it through with him, and he reminded me of, he used to work at Clerical Medical, and he was saying that he was leading a pitch board a while back, and they had put out this exciting event for people to look at. And he said, you know, put it out to 3 organisations, and one of them came back and said, actually, thanks, but no thanks. And they were like, oh, why is that? And they said, well, your budget is far too small for what you want, and actually are completely unrealistic. We wouldn't touch that with a barge pole, because it's not going to work, and it could compromise our reputation. So they were like, okay. Anyway, the other 2 companies that were invited to pitch did. They came in, never made any comment about the timeline or the budget, and that actually made the pitch board really nervous. And you know what? They actually went back to the guys that said thanks but no thanks, and worked them through with a workable timeline, a workable budget. So actually saying no can be really powerful, and it shows that you're there for the long term, and you're not just there to make a fast buck. Anyway, I'll get back on track. So how well do you know your client? Never confuse, and going back to the story earlier, never confuse friendship with business. Nobody is your mate. Unless your mate's the CEO, and even then, CEOs are at the behest of procurement, finance, risk, and, you know, particularly a lot of you are CIOs. How many times if a CEO comes in and says, my mate can do, get out, just get out, you don't even want to, no mates coming in here. And know their business. Are you on top of why are they putting the brief out? What else is going on? You know, do your research around them, their competitors, know where they're going, what's their strategic intent. I mean, every business has got a strategic intent, and let that be the thread that's going to run through any response that you're given. If you can demonstrate that you know and understand what matters to them and have it cleverly woven, then you're on to a winner. Sorry, excuse me. Pardon me. A personal thing for me is aligned values. It's business. We've just said people aren't your mates. People work with people. But it comes down to the people you're working with. Are your values aligned? Are your values aligned around diversity and inclusion? You know, we've just spoken about the payment gap. Is that something that's going to irk you? You know, you need to make sure that you're aligned. Climate change. Are you checking them out on social media? What are people saying about them? That's really important. You know, do your due diligence, find out who the decision makers are, and if you can connect with them on, say, LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter, go on Clubhouse. What are they listening to? What are they talking about? Let them know that you're excited to be getting involved with them, and you find out a bit more about what makes them tick. I'm going to tell you a funny story. I remember doing a pitch a few years back, and it was for a global company, and their global head of comms was going to be there. I got on really well with the team, but they were quite fearful of him. He sounded a bit scary. The checking out I did on LinkedIn, he seemed a very formidable guy. Anyway, I did a bit of social media stalking, and I found a photograph of him on Facebook wearing a green mankini. So there was a bit of me thought, if we don't get the business, the picture's going viral. But seriously though, what it did do was it gave me a bit of insight to help me see that the person who I was pitching to had a bit of a personality, and he wasn't the stern, scary bloke that his team thought he was. So get to know your people. Next slide, please. And we all know what happened with this chap here. One of the most awkward situations we all had to see. And I'd love to know what awkward things have happened to you, or what scares you the most about an awkward situation. And despite all the preparation in the world, things can go wrong. And in the midst of the excitement of doing a pitch, and let's face it, we all fear being judged. What are people going to be thinking about what I'm saying, what I'm showing? We can stumble in our words. We can forget something really important, realise we've not included something, or look down and notice we've got a stain on our jumper. So there's a couple of things I'd say about that. And as Rebecca's just shared so well, know your worth. You've earned your seat at this. You've earned your seat at this table. So, you know, whatever it is that's bothering you, put it in a bubble, stick a pin in it, throw it in a balloon, let it flow away. Focus on what you're doing. Breathe, take a minute and put it into perspective. If you've forgotten something, that's okay. You'll send it on at the end of the meeting. If you don't know the answer, or you've forgotten something, say, great question, I'll come back to you. And this is something that actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was doing an investor pitch and I was really nervous. You know, I was there asking people for money. I was nervous, I was excited. And someone said to me, it was a stat around life administration. And my mind went blank. I just couldn't think. And I said, that's a great question. Actually, I don't know the answer. And later on, I said, I'll come back to you. And as soon as I'd finished went off, I thought, of course I know the answer. We've done hours and hours of research on that. Of course I knew it. Anyway, the feedback on that was, actually, she should have known that. But it was great that she's honest and she's not a bullshitter. So, be honest. If you don't know something, just be honest. And sometimes nerves can grab you by the throat. So again, be honest and say, I'm a bit nervous, I'm a bit anxious, and always have one of these, because having that glass of water or a cup of coffee while you do this, it buys you a couple of seconds just to regroup yourself. And be confident, your work's done, and that's why, next slide please, you will stand out from the crowd. Standing out from the crowd and setting yourself apart is about being curious, you've asked the right questions, you've done your homework. This isn't about a client-supplier relationship. This is a partnership. You're in it together, and through the work you do and asking questions and your curiosity, that builds trust. Be consistent with everything. Consistency is key. Always show up. Do what you say you're going to do, and treat your client the way they want to be treated. Find out things like, how does a client, and I should have said this earlier, how does a client want to be communicated with? Because not everyone wants an email. Some people want WhatsApp, Slack, text. There's someone that a business partner I work with, you could send him 1,000 emails, they get lost in the pile. Send him a text, he'll come back to you straight away. So you're more likely to get a response if you find out how they want to work. You know, most importantly, be yourself. People do deal with people. That's what makes the world go round. So it's pitch day, you've done your due diligence, your preparation's in the bag. Be confident, you're going to smash it. Thank you.
I do love that point, Catherine. And I was just gonna say, sometimes, as you were saying, people buy into people, and those things that you said on the last slide, when things go wrong, it actually humanises you and like makes people think, you know, they resonate with, okay, I've been in that situation before. Like I'd sometimes with my dog, like earlier when we were doing the prep call, because although inside you might think panic station, that's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
you know, often you resonate, and humanizing yourself actually is what makes you more relatable and authentic as well. So I definitely think the be yourself bit there, and be a human, because people buy from other humans, not from a robot.
Okay, absolutely. And I think that's something that COVID has really helped with. That's been a real positive, where we rather than being in boardrooms where it can be quite a scary atmosphere, we're doing things like this, you know, for parents who were working from home, their kids' heads were coming in, you know, things were going on in the background. We were seeing the homes that people lived in. You know, it did make everything so much more human, and I think has been a real positive for a lot of relationships. And it's made people have to move out of their comfort zone into a new area of working. But I'd love to know, what is the worst scenario for anyone? What is that most awkward thing, or what's the issues? What scares people about pitch? I mean, there's so many aspects to a pitch, and I could talk about how you yourself present yourself, how you get your content right. But for me, a pitch starts with the due diligence and understanding why you're doing it. But I'm really happy to answer any questions around any aspect of pitching or anything that we've talked about this morning.
Just people to come off mute then if you've got something to share.
I'll interject and I'll tell you a funny story about the worst thing that and the most awkward thing that ever happened to me in a pitch. It was years ago, and it was when hold-ups had just come out, and I was going to do a pitch, and it was to Black Horse Finance, and I had been trying to get in here for ages and ages. And as I ran up the steps of their offices in Edinburgh, as I went through the door, I could feel ping, ping, and the elastic at the top of both of them went. Now, instead of taking them off and having bare legs, I asked the receptionist for 2 elastic bands, and I put these elastic bands round the top of the hold-ups, which was almost stopping the circulation in my legs, and I had these kind of plastic things flapping round below my skirt, and I was so preoccupied thinking about that my pitch was diabolical, and I know I didn't win the work. So if something like that happens, just think, would they have noticed that I had bare legs? Absolutely not. Did they notice I was terribly distracted? I would say absolutely. So things, you know, things can go wrong. You know, technology, like this morning, technology doesn't always work. But think through things and think, what if this happens, what will I do? So wear tights.
That's brilliant. You shared that for us. I mean, for me as well, I was just listening to your presentation, and what was brilliant about it is because right at the start you'd said, look, I'm going to just make this short and sweet, share some experiences. And at Crimson and the recruitment team and our leader as well, actually, Rob, who's been my boss for many years, he's always stressed the importance of being able to tell those stories. And I think what really resonated with me is you know, being consistent, being yourself, showing your passion, which is obviously some things Rebecca was referring to earlier as well, have always been so true to how I've been successful in delivering stuff, and also sometimes missed out when I have been pitching for the wrong work. And I think in the last few years, and I think it does come with a bit of maturity and a bit of confidence sometimes, albeit if you follow your steps, you know, you can get there a lot quicker than obviously putting so much effort into things that are not going to necessarily be right, and you can waste a lot of time. But just hearing you then, it's being so credible and so passionate and so aware of what you do and doing that preparation, like you say, because then if the slides don't work or you lose your train of thought, it doesn't matter. And then that sincerity and that authenticity and that experience all comes through because you are able to tell that story. And I think where I've had most success is where I have managed to make relatable experiences and reference those in pitches and really give those examples of real life stuff, and that's what has, I think, often been the case for me. But I love this last slide I'm presenting to my team this afternoon, and I've just copied it and I've just literally screenshotted it and said, you know, as per the Women in Tech event this morning, because if you can leave your team with thinking of those 4 things, that's going to make them, you know, they're all brilliant already, but some of them don't even know it yet. So just allowing them to feel that. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. It's been really insightful today, what you've spoken about, and really, to be honest, humbling as well to hear about your brain freeze, because that's always one of my fears when you actually get into the pitch, is having that moment where actually you've got so much that you need to remember that when you get in there, you can't remember everything. And I love the little reminder of the Zoom bombing incident that happened with the BBC presenter. You know, a bit as somebody was just saying before, things to take away for your team. That was one of the ones that I've taken, particularly where we're thinking about the D&I aspects of things. Then, you know, it is okay to be your authentic self going into these pitches. And finally, the tips for actually getting to know people across the social media. I must admit, to be honest, I hadn't thought about that angle, and yes, it makes somebody that might seem a bit daunting, actually, if we're going to make a presentation, actually understanding them socially is a good tip, especially now we're in a virtual world. So thank you.
Absolutely. I did a pitch on Clubhouse about 6 weeks ago. They do investment pitches, and there was someone there who I particularly wanted to connect with. It's a gentleman called Ying Tan. He's just sold out his business Dynamo. So I did some research on him, and I was actually able to say, I said, you know, and as Ying said in his interview with, and I can't remember the chap's name, but I'd written it down, in his interview with him 2 weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. And he instantly then connected with me, and him and I are starting to build a really good relationship. And it was because I had done my homework. Who did I want to speak to? Who did I want to impress? You know, why? And, you know, just doing a bit of, you know, it is stalking, but that information's there for us to have. Make use of it.
It does make you stand out as well, doesn't it? And that, what you just said, it's like pay attention to them, but then also make note and tell them that you paid attention. But then equally, like how you put here, be curious, ask questions, because nobody likes someone who just talks at them and actually doesn't understand what they want, because they might want something completely different to what you're about to pitch. So understand them, but equally, like you just said, pay attention to what they're doing and make sure you tell them that you have paid attention, because that won't go unnoticed. And that's with any client meeting, any pitch. If you can show them that you've been doing above and beyond, it's not just another pitch, it's not just a meeting. You've been looking at what they've been doing on LinkedIn. You've been seeing the activity they've been posting, what events they've been going to, or what's important to them. If you bring that up, one, it's relatable, but two, you've gone above and beyond, and they'll notice that.
Yep. And if that doesn't work, share the Mankini photograph.
Just so you know, ladies, our chat window is playing up at the moment. Holly's just let me know. So if you do want to come off mute, then please feel free to. So I might just not stop sharing this presentation so I can actually see everyone a little bit better as well. I suppose to finish off, I'm going to put you guys on the spot again. Sorry, I keep doing this. Maybe Catherine, I'll come to you. So your presentation was really, really useful and really useful for me, and I'm sure a lot of the ladies and the academy that have joined. So thank you everyone for joining first thing in the morning. But if you just have 3 tips that, you know, the ladies can walk away, you know, implementing and knowing this week, what would you say you'd leave them with?
Due diligence, research, confidence.
Love it. I mean, I didn't even practice that, so that's good. Rebecca, what about you?
So for me, just do something. You know, don't talk about it, don't think about it. Actually, do something. And is that 3 tips? I don't know, but you know, that's them. Yeah.
Do something. Love it. Thank you both so much. You've been awesome, and I really, really appreciate your time. So, ladies, please do connect with both Rebecca and Catherine Ann. And also, we will be sending out kind of feedback forms, just because I like to get a steer from you ladies what you want us to cover, talk about what you want me to get speakers on, because it's got to be, you know, useful for you, and also, you know, you can take something from each of the sessions, because it's about you at the end of the day and about us as a community. So please do respond to those emails if you can. We will be doing another Women in Tech meetup in the next couple of months, so please do keep an eye out for your emails, where we'll be letting you know what to expect, where and when. And again, I really appreciate it and appreciate you ladies coming. I'm just going to share my screen now with Rebecca's, Catherine and my details, as well as Lou's details, so that you can link in with us and ask us any questions after the session as well. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. But I will put the QR code so you can just link in with us quickly as well if you haven't done that already. There you go. So if you want to just link in with us, it's a quick way to do this, and I'll also send the QR codes for Catherine Ann and Rebecca as well. So you just scan this with your phone and it will come up with us on LinkedIn. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. So keep an eye out for your emails. Thank you again, Rebecca and Catherine Ann, and everyone who's joined and participated. Appreciate every one of you. See you soon.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good.
Bye.
Bye, ladies, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye bye.